Welcome to The Hump with Katie Thiroux. I'm your host, Katie Thiroux, and I'm bringing you interviews with some incredible artists, finding out why are they so amazing, how did it all happen, and what can we learn from their journey. Before we get started today, I would love to thank our sponsors, and first up, we have Jams World. Okay, by now, you all know how much I absolutely love Jams World, and they're offering our listeners a 15% online discount. Jams World is a family-owned and operated clothing company based in Honolulu, Hawaii since 1964. And I love the clothing so much because it keeps me cool and comfortable because it's made from 100% spun-crushed rayon. Plus, the artwork is so amazing, it's so unique, and it's screen-printed right onto the fabric. Go to jamsworld.com and use the promo code JAZZ15 and you'll get 15% off your entire online purchase. That's jamsworld.com. Okay, up next, we have Kolstein, and I just love Kolstein. It's my most favorite string shop to visit in the entire world. They have an amazing online store. They're based in Long Island, New York, and they actually just opened another location. Anytime I'm in New York City, I head on over to Kolstein to see what new things they've got going on. They do everything from instrument repair to building instruments. They make really amazing double basses. They make their own strings and rosin and bass bibs. They do it all. And plus, they're so informative and so kind there. So pop in the store and get an online discount, or give them a call, or go online. Go to kolstein.com and use the promo code KD10 and you'll get 10% off your entire purchase. That's kolstein.com. I want to let you know that I have a new recording out called Katie Thiroux Live at Kroger Lake. This is a live recording from August 2019 with my trio, Glenn Zaleski on piano and Matt Whittick on drums, and I just loved the energy from the audience and the band that night, and I'm so glad it was recorded so I can share it with you. The record is mixed in a way that you actually feel like you are sitting right in the audience, so if you're missing live music like I am, this is sure to fill that void. It's available on iTunes, Spotify, and everywhere you get your music. All right, Hump listeners, I have an interesting episode for you today. I've had a lot of people asking about me and how I came to play bass and got into jazz and singing and touring and teaching and all that. And to be honest, I'm a little reluctant to talk about myself because this show is all about you and about other bass players and amazing musicians. But since this is the holiday season, this is my little treat and gift to all of you, I guess. And my good friend and bass player and educator, Richard Simon, was kind enough to interview me. And so it was a lot of fun talking with him. So this is just a little bit of behind the scenes, and hopefully you learn a little bit, and maybe it explains some things about myself. So without further ado, here's me. Here's Katie Thiroux.
Well, that's a great attitude. So you would never turn down a request from a fellow band member if you don't know the tune. You would take the plunge and learn it on the fly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So when did you first realize you could do that? I mean, I remember as an adult learner, many of the people my age would show up with either a real book or charts that they had collected and put in a binder, and a music stand. And if it wasn't something that was in their collection, it didn't get played. Mm-hmm. But here you are, just playing things with no preparation. When did you begin to play songs that you hadn't heard before?
I think it came from, teachers such as yourself and being in Jazz America, where maybe there was music, but it was kind of like, it's not going to serve me that well to, I'd rather hear it. And then also another educator in LA, Lee Seacard at Colburn, he was like married to the real book because my brothers studied with him before I did. And then he just had some come to Jesus and he threw it away. He made everybody throw it away. So I had already kind of heard wind of that. Like as a kid, I didn't play jazz yet. And then when I finally joined one of the jazz bands, I was actually just wheeling my bass around Colburn. I was probably lost because it's so big there, and I was like 12 years old. And literally he was like, we need a bass player everyone needs a bass player, right? And he's like, I need a bass player right now. And that's probably happened to everybody. And I said, I don't play jazz. I don't know the tunes. I read music, just playing classical stuff. And he's like, it's cool. We don't read music. Everyone's just learning off of a recording. So that was my first foyer into learning by ear, because I'd already listened to music, classical music. I loved old country music growing up. And so I'm already hearing good music and good stories. So it probably happened around the age I was 12. And then it was just, to me, it was like, oh, this is what everybody does. And so when you would start calling me to sub for gigs, I didn't need to know what people were playing or what was being called. I may have heard the song before, like on the radio, because we had good radio back then. I loved Chuck Niles, and he would play really great music on K-Jazz. So I heard all this music, and it's like, if I could get the form down, I probably didn't know what key it was in, but I just kept going. But I just thought everybody did that. So I thought, well, that's what you're supposed to do.
Now, you arrived at Colburn at the ripe age of 12, so you had already been playing the bass for how long?
I started playing bass when I was 8 at Colburn, when it was in its, I wouldn't say infancy, it was in its cocoon stage, and it was about to blossom into this butterfly, because Colburn used to be housed in the AV warehouse section of USC. In a not so great part of town, and it was just this building full of Wenger practice rooms. And I started there when I was 8, because I had played the violin for 4 years, and it was bad.
What was bad? The violin, the practice rooms? The
violin was bad, and
now, was it badly behaved? It was in bad shape, or what part?
I think I was just waiting for the bass, and I did it because I had to. I'm the youngest of 4 children, and we all start on violin when we're 4. You'd think we're Japanese or something, and we all do Suzuki, and nobody was outstanding, I'll tell you that. None of us were, but we all stuck with it, and it was kind of like an unwritten rule. After 4 years, you could choose another instrument. And so my sister went to viola, and then my oldest brother went to viola. My brother Dominic, I think he went right to bass. I don't know how old he was. And then my mom said, why don't you play the bass? Why don't you try the bass? Everyone needs a bass player, so you'll always make money and have a job. But I didn't think of it that way. I didn't have a choice. It was like, took me in the car to go take a lesson. And my very first lesson was with David Young, and it was a great pairing, because it was like my whole life I was waiting, for 8 years, I was waiting for the bass, and of course it was smaller, it was a quarter size, but even the way everything was just, this is my size. And I wasn't like an overgrown kid. I was wide, I wasn't tall, but I was like, hey, I'm waiting for this bass. And even the way when I first held the bow, it was, this thing fits in my hand. I felt like I was crushing the violin. So it was really like a magical moment. I can really remember that.
That is beautiful. And did you pick up a French bow because it resembled the violin bow, or did you go for German?
French just because I think a lot of people, that's what their teacher plays. You play that. So I played French bow. And you took to the instrument right away as if you'd been waiting for it, and it was probably waiting for you. And how about, was there any issue with the strength required to press down the strings and to space the fingers of the left hand, being young and maybe wide but not big? And the fingers, I've had young students who sometimes have an issue with, even with a quarter-size bass, with the circumference of the strings and the action being a little bit challenging. How about in your case? Not that I can remember, and I'm sure maybe I had to get used to it, but again, coming from a string instrument already, I probably understood, the distance kind of needed. And thank God a whole step is now 4 inches, not, half a centimeter.
Right.
The only time I remember having an issue was when I got a 3/4 size bass, and it wasn't the best instrument. It was fiberglass, plexiglass, and I just remember that I missed because I went from a quarter size to a half size bass, and then to this other bass, and it was a beast to play, and I remember that being harder to play. But no, I don't remember that being an issue. And also, I loved practicing bass. Violin was not so great, but that was easy for me. It was nice. I had the books. I went through George Vance, and it was just going through books and just reading. And as long as I was practicing, my mom wouldn't yell at me either or tell me to do stuff. So it was a nice escape that way. Everyone would leave me alone as long as I was doing something.
That is terrific. It's kind of like a politician wanting to stay in office so that he doesn't get prosecuted as a civilian. So you have your refuge. Not only you weren't really hiding from the chores, but this was a passion that you took to quite naturally.
Yeah.
When did you start playing with others? Were you in a little student ensemble right away, or was it all private lessons for a while?
Yeah, I think because I had been singing, but I don't think taking private lessons. So I had done choir things with other people, and the first time when I played bass in an orchestra, again, really bad. I was bad too. I mean, I wasn't even though I practiced, it took work. I want to say maybe I remember being 9 or 10, being at CSUN with their youth orchestra. Again, my mom conducted it, so that was nepotism, so I was allowed to be in it. But being in the back, and it was a string ensemble, so getting to play things, maybe they were watered down versions, but like the Four Seasons and things like that. So getting to hear some really good music and trying to play it.
Mm-hmm. And you were 9 at that point?
Yeah, because I remember as soon as I got a bass, I want to say it was probably the beginning of the school year, but I remember that summer getting to go to Aerobear music camp and being in the orchestra. So yeah, I would say by 9 I was getting to play in orchestras.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned choir. Did you enjoy singing as much as you enjoyed playing the bass?
I don't think so. I didn't, because I didn't mind singing with others, and I could sing any of the parts, and I was usually, alto. And then in high school, I had a really big range, so I could sing soprano or tenor. But no, I didn't really care for the music either. It was a lot of classical music, but it opened a lot of doors and opportunities because I was with the LA Children's Chorus, I think it's called. And they were kind of like the farm team for the LA Opera. So if they ever needed kid singers, they would come to us. So I got to be in a production of the LA Opera, the world premiere of Fantastic Mr. Fox. So when I was 10, so that was a cool experience.
I'll say.
Yeah.
So, wow, a lot of experience, very young. Now, I'm going to jump ahead and jump back. Which is not easy at my age, but the teaching that you do, have you been around kids that are at the age you were when you were doing so much playing already? Since you've become an educator, are you around 4 to 8 to 10-year-olds or not?
No, not that young. I've not 4 and 8, but maybe around 10 or 11, 10 to 12, I've had some bass students, and that's been really fun because you either go geez, was I like that? Or man, this kid is so much better than I was in a good way, not a comparison, but wow, they're really picking it up, which is cool because again, you kind of have that beginner's mind of, well, I'm doing this now, everything's so fresh and new when you're little.
Right. And, were you playing with others outside of school? Do you remember when that first started happening?
Yeah, I'm trying. Maybe things I put together. I was told I was an old soul, so I remember it was hard to get other people to even at my middle school. I grew up in Chatsworth. But everything I did was, in Los Angeles. So the kids around me, and I went to a good middle school. We had a great program, but they weren't listening to jazz or classical or anything. Pretty much nobody was. So I remember getting my brothers. My oldest brother plays guitar, And then my brother Dominic, play bass and get a drummer. And I remember getting a gig at a coffee shop to just sing. I wasn't singing and playing, but I was singing, started to really love jazz and singing jazz. So yeah, not kids my age yet, maybe until high school. And I went to Hamilton High, and we didn't have it was a good music program, but we didn't have like a combo class. We didn't have a theory or improv or anything. So we would just, that was our version of, jamming in the garage. We'd jam at the lunch hour, and then we made our own combo, and we were able to do cool festivals and things like that, but pretty much like outside of school.
And you said Hamilton had no theory. How did you pick up theory? Was it just an instinctive thing, or did you have method books, or did it all just dawn on you one morning that, that 251, I don't need to have that explained or sit in a class. I just get it.
Yeah, as silly as it sounds, it all dawned on me basically all at once, because I didn't worry about it. Even though I play bass, and that's an integral part of, our root system,
right?
Knowing things, I knew enough that logically, okay, if we're not changing keys and it's a 2-chord, it's most likely going to be minor. So just following, if we're in a major key, following how chords work diatonically. And man, even through Berkeley, I did the classes that I had to do, but it was really me working everything out on the bass by myself, going, oh, this is like how you play a minor dominant 7 chords starting from the 7th, or it was me like doing all that work. I couldn't get that from a classroom. And then actually like teaching, that's when I learned the most, because there was a lot of light bulb moments for me when I first started teaching. I was like, oh, this is so easy.
Right. I had a similar experience. I mean, there's something intuitive about harmony, Western harmony, that applies to jazz. And so I found myself in a college theory class, and it was almost as if I was teaching them through some telepathy, because I knew where they were going with this, and they were giving words and a certain meaning to what I had already figured out. And I knew enough about the bass by then to kind of get where I wanted to go as an accompanist. Now, soloing is a different animal. I mean, of course, you have to be mindful of harmony when you're soloing, but how young were you when you started soloing on the bass? Do you remember?
Probably around age 12 too. Like, I think that's when I started at Colburn with Lee Seacard in the jazz program. And I know a lot of people have like hesitation, or younger kids, like, they just freeze. And for some reason, right. I'm sure I know there's studies done. For some reason, girls freeze, when they're asked to improvise. But again, I just thought, everybody does this.
Growing up, girls could be cold. That was my experience.
Yeah.
Couldn't even get eye contact. No, but I've heard that too. So you kind of broke through that against the grain. You didn't freeze, and somebody would say you got it, and you had it.
Yeah,
you were able to.
Yeah, it was the same thing with learning songs by ear. It was like, well, everybody does, or this is what you're supposed to do, so you do that. And everybody sounds bad when they're 12, and I actually wasn't even thinking about that. I was just trying to figure it out.
And along the way, were you kind of unconsciously singing your solo lines, consciously singing the solo lines, or did the singing and the playing take different paths?
I started playing bass because I was studying with Tierney Sutton when I was 12, vocally. And I called her because my dad was in the union, so I had her phone. The union used to have the phone book. So right. I found her number, and I called and I said I'd like to take lessons, and she's like, you sound pretty young. I said, yeah, I'm 12 years old. So I came, she's like, well, come bring a tape of you singing. So I sang, my brothers were accompanying me, and I sang My Romance, and I guess she thought she was okay, we could work with this. So We were just working on jazz stuff at that time. That's all I thought it was. So improvising, phrasing, and things like that, and really working on knowing the roots of songs. And I'd already started playing jazz bass by then. She said, well, to practice this, because most everybody, well, now you can find terrible backing tracks, but, you know, I would have to sit at a piano, play the notes. She's like, just play the root on the bass and then sing the rest of the chord on top of it. So you can just accompany yourself. So I started doing that just out of a need for practicing. And then it just kind of turned into, oh, let me play half notes. Okay, now let me sing the root and then play the chord on the bass. So then it was just kind of fun. It was like a chess match with myself to see, like, you know, how far can this go? And then I'm trying to think of why I started singing bass lines too. That was either Kristen Korb or John Clayton. It could have been either of them.
Mm-hmm. They encouraged you to sing what you play.
Yeah, sing what you play, sing your bass lines. Yeah, I'll have to go back in my memory bank to see which one was first, but they both say it.
Oh, that's cool. Now, in your case, I heard you remark on one of your Hump interviews that you have to be a little bit crazy, because I think there was somebody who asked you how you make that happen. And I would have to admit, I have to stop one or the other. I can't do them at the same time. I can't even answer a question posed to me without being expected to sing the answer. And it's just the two hemispheres of the brain are at odds in my case. But in your case, there's really no barrier, evidently. Would you agree?
I'll preface this by saying I cannot talk and play at all. That's difficult. So, and I've started to try when I had this 3-month residency in Dubai. We were playing 5 nights a week. So at the end, I always tried just playing a blues and announcing everybody. Just it was the end of the night. Everyone had already, you know, been drinking enough. So, okay, this is safe to try because I want to be able to do this. So that's not so much of a priority. But yeah, the singing and playing, I feel like you can listen to both I can listen to both at the same time in my head. I'm not on autopilot on the bass, but I've played enough changes, enough, you know, I can get my way around a 2-5-1 many different ways. So my hand just goes where it wants to. Hopefully it doesn't follow the contour of the line, but yeah, I'm very comfortable with that. And it's the most comfortable for me. But I will say, it's difficult. I don't just sing with a bass player behind me because that is more distracting, because I might go, oh, they missed a change. Oh, I wouldn't have played that. But the only time I've said this, I don't even know if I said this to you. We were at, I can't remember, the G Spot, Alan Goldman's.
Right.
And you were playing and I was singing something and I was like, Richard is...
And I played the wrong change.
No. And I was like, Richard is the only bass player that I could sing and he could play bass and I wouldn't have to play bass because it was just exactly comfortable, exactly what I needed. It was just perfect.
My goodness. Gosh, I don't know how to follow that. You actually incorporate a third brain function. I caught something of yours on your website, or maybe adjunct to one of the Hump sessions, where you were playing the changes to a John Coltrane tune and singing. I don't know if I can't remember if you were improvising or singing the melody and reading at the same time. I don't know if you were reading the Wall Street Journal. No, you were reading either the transcription of the bass line or the melody. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so this is something that really helped me learn how to divide and conquer the bass and the voice. I didn't start with John Coltrane, but yeah, that specific thing, I just transcribed vocally the melodic line of John Coltrane, wrote down the bass line of Steve Davis, because it's kind of those changes, there's not too much you can do. And I was working on something else that was similar. So I wanted to kind of get inside that. But that's something that for some reason is easy for me. I can read the changes. Read the bass line and sing on top of it, because that's easily stored in my head. But that's what I first started doing with Miles Davis and Paul Chambers. The first song I did that on was If I Were a Bell from Relaxin' with the Miles Davis Quintet. So I transcribed Miles Davis's everything, the melody in his solo, and then I transcribed Paul Chambers' bass line, because why not? It's great. But then I really realized, okay, where do things hook up? Where do they line up? Where are they separate? And sometimes they both come in on, an offbeat, but they feel it a little bit differently. So just taking that time was quintessential to how I can do this now. Okay, I had to look at my foot on all 4 beats. Okay, he comes in on the and of 3, and that's on the E of 3. Okay. So that was a bit crazy, but taking those, didn't have to do too many, but that's a whole, year's worth of lessons in itself.
Right. So you're sort of an autodidact. I mean, you've mentioned Kristen and John Clayton. You studied with each of them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For years or
Kristen,
briefly?
Kristen, because I only had classical bass teachers. Again, just so lucky, especially, I think every city has great teachers, and you just have to find them. But starting bass with David Young, and then got to study with Peter Roffet from the LA Phil, and then Francis Sanger. And so I only had classical bass teachers. And then I was a junior in high school, or a sophomore. I had attended Port Townsend's jazz workshop before John Clayton took it over. So it's great now, but it was really great then, because it was Bud Shank, Bob Florence. It was really just a really fun hang. And Kristen Korb was the bass accompanist in the vocal workshop, because I went as a vocalist because I couldn't bring my bass up. It was too hard. So I met her there, and then when I came back to LA, asked her for lessons. So I think I studied with her for 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And John?
John, I met at the Vail Jazz Workshop when I was maybe 17 years old. And luckily I have a really good memory for some things. Other things I forget, and that's fine. But I got to spend a week with him, a lot of one-on-one and small groups. And so many of the things I learned there, I've carried for the rest of my life. And then I've really only taken a few private lessons with him after I finished my master's degree, or maybe while I was doing it. But from being around him, if you just watch him, perform, or you watch him deal with people, you just learn so much just from viewing him. Oh, and the best is we've been in same playing situations on festivals, and I'll eat it sometimes. Someone had called a tune, and there was no time for me to say, I have never heard this, but okay. And so I played a major third on a minor chord, maybe, because the piano was very evasive. And I don't remember the song, but I learned it after. But John he pulled me aside. He was like, watch those, major thirds on minor chords. And of course I wasn't going to say, I didn't know the song. But, there's no excuse. But it's great to have someone like that, helping you out.
We are very, I don't like the word blessed, but in this case, I'll make a concession. To be in a town with the John Claytons and the classical people you mentioned, and you're right that you can probably find a good teacher just about anywhere, but to have the creme de la creme all in one city. I mean, look at your education. Someone from Dubai, let's say, would have had to come here and spend a fortune to study with those people. So
yeah.
I'm sure you realize and appreciate how incredible those experiences were, and to be with those people. And as you say, with John, he's sort of a sensei, one of those realized souls who has no ego when it comes to sharing what he knows, and he's just so thoroughly at home with himself, and he, like you, was able to cross back and forth between classical and jazz, and so I'm sure he's proud of you, even if he might tweak you from time to time about those major thirds. Now, do you bow? I have to confess, I haven't heard Katie Thiroux bowed solo. I'm pretty sure you've kept that skill together.
I do keep that skill together, especially classically. And there was a time a couple of years ago when I was really trying to work it up, not into my repertoire, but just, on a gig, take it out and play a bowed solo.
Right.
Luckily, that was one of those things that, since I play French bow, the whole wrist thing was really natural to me. So that didn't go away. I don't enjoy playing bowed solos like in a jazz setting. I like it. I like to reserve it for the more for the finesse, maybe a ballad or even just the classical stuff I like to play. But no, I was actually thinking about that the other day because I have that famous Slam Stewart I Got Rhythm.
Right.
With Don Bias. I used to love playing, things like that. So like the exciting things are fun, but it is one of those things where I'm like, well, there's plenty of really great people who do that, but that's next on my list to conquer, I suppose.
Well, it's not as if there's a glaring gap in your musicianship, because as you sing and play, and your resume is this ever expanding. I was looking at your website, and I didn't go into the discography, into the weeds, so to speak, but I heard the unmistakable clarinet work of Ken Poplawski. How did you come to connect with Ken Poplawski?
Ken. I had seen him at Newport Beach Jazz Party. Trying to think, there's one more other place I might have seen him. And I knew he was someone I wanted to play with really badly because I loved the way he played. He's hilarious. I love the songs he plays. And I was called in 2014 for the Vail Jazz Festival as an alumni. They had an alumni group, which is actually where I met my friend and cohort, Justin Coughlin. So it was a great weekend. But I saw, when you play a festival, you don't get to choose. It's a jazz party. So you just get, you get your sheet. Okay, you're doing these gigs. And of course, as a bass player, you're working your butt off. So,
right.
But I saw the only gig I had with Ken was on the bill, and it was a jam session. I said, no problem. I'm going to do everything I need to do to show him that I want to play with him. And so there wasn't like months in preparation. It was like I got the schedule a week ahead of time. So I said, okay, let me check out his last few records. Because it's kind of sometimes it can be a bummer when you get to a jam session with 7 people and people just go, oh, what do you want to play? I don't know. What do you want to play? And these could be the greatest musicians on earth. So I wanted to have my list ready. So I went, got his last 3 recordings, learned all the songs, even like some of them were, again, some obscure tunes. And then Eric Reed was also playing piano. So I had maybe played with him a little bit. So I knew stuff he liked to play. So I came with my own list for the jam session. And as Ken was reading the list, he's like, oh, these are great songs. That's another great song. Hey, I've recorded all these songs. I said, yeah, I know. I really want to play with you, Ken. And so it was great that we had a set list, too, because then we could just, go ahead and play. And Ken, we, talked a little bit over the weekend, and he said, if I ever call you to come to New York, to do a gig, would you come out? I said, yes, I will. And luckily, my husband's family lives in New York, so we go there often. We have a place to stay. Colstein's has been so great, and they have with their basses, so I can come in and grab a bass. And like a week later, he called and he said, I have, like a week at Birdland. He's like, can you come, in a month or two? I said, yeah,
Nice.
of course. So he was good on his word, and I did my homework, so to say, to learn his music and show him that I wanted to play with him. And then it just kind of grew, it blossomed from there.
And if I'm not mistaken, I was playing one of those Newport Beach jazz parties a few years ago, and you were teamed up with Ken there, and maybe the Four Freshmen.
Oh,
and
yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, there was a live recording during that. You remember that?
I do remember that. I think Ken had recommended that for me as well. And it was one of those situations where like they said, we're going to record this, and if we use it, we'll pay you for the recording. And it was fun. It was interesting, especially I hadn't heard the Four Freshmen ever. I didn't even know what that was, to be honest, at that point. And of course, it wasn't the original Four Freshmen.
No, these guys have been undergraduates for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to worry about them. So there's obviously a lot of turnover, but you were just seamlessly incorporated into it and played flawlessly. I was secretly hoping for a Richard Simon moment where, I would have made a mistake there, but you didn't. And you were just very impressive. And I think people commented on that around me in the audience, like, she's really good. Did you ever study with her? You ever think about So you're just, now I have to ask this because there are a lot of students interested in trying to pursue a career like yours. What would be the most embarrassing musical moment in a live situation or in a prestigious setting where you felt like this couldn't be happening? How do I get out of here? Where is the shovel so I can plant myself and disappear?
The first one I can think of, there are many off the top of my head, turned out to not be so traumatic, and I learned a great lesson, but it was, I think it was an LA Jazz Society award show, and I was playing in the rhythm section for the great vocalist with the Count Basie Orchestra now, Carmen Bradford. And I played an introduction to a song, a simple tune, da 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 da.
I let the song go out of my heart.
Yeah, totally cool. And it was not anything clear for her to hear where to come in at all. And it was all my fault. But she was so cool on the mic. She was like, I'm at a certain age, I can just start over. I had no idea where we were. So then I played something very, very clear, and we were all cool. But that was a good moment. My role as a bass player, maybe I was thinking like I was sick of playing 1-6-2-5, but
right,
it's cool to be clear, right?
That's right. That's a very good lesson for everybody. I mean, we want to be hip, and yet if we've never worked with those people before, our role is to be supportive, and very often the simplest thing wins you more accolades than something that's never been played before. And I mean, sure, there's humbling moments constantly, and this being a spontaneous art, I think a lot of the magic happens when I think it was Buddy Collette who told me there are no mistakes, only opportunities. Mm-hmm. So if you're a half step off here and there, or you play a different change, make it a temporary modulation, and then come back to where you know it to be. To kind of, let's see, you hinted at the progress of your education. You casually mentioned your master's degree. Was that from Berkeley as well? Or
that was from Cal State Long Beach, yeah. Okay.
And during that period, you spent some time in, was it Central America or South America, doing some teaching?
Yeah, so after I finished Berkeley College of Music, as I graduated, I did it in 3 years. I just kept going. And so the summer I graduated, they someone from the music ed department had gotten a call, and they wanted a referral for a bass teacher for one of Berklee's network schools in Ecuador. And so it was just a coincidence that they referred me and my then boyfriend, Matt Whittick, because they also needed a drummer. They didn't know that we were together. And it turns out they needed a vocal teacher. I wasn't so good at business back then, or else I would have gotten proper pay, but it was a good experience. But yeah, so I went straight from graduating, moved to Ecuador, and had a studio of about 30 students a week, bass and voice. And I learned so much about teaching, about just really good methods for teaching for myself, because I was getting burnt out physically. I was like playing during each lesson, and it was almost more taxing on my body than playing gigs. But I was kind of like thirsty to perform, because there wasn't so much opportunity there. But I thank them so much, because I learned so much about how to teach effectively. And
I'm half remembering an email you sent or a story you told upon your return about an older, was it a vibes player that happened to live there, or somebody that really made an impression on you, because he was not only old, but old school. He was another old soul.
Yeah, his name, I don't think he'd still be around, because he was pretty old back then. His name was Dick Saltzman, and he was a vibraphone player, like not on the level of ML Richards like that, but he was still getting his union residuals. They were mailing it down to Ecuador, so he was pretty active. And then if you have a sum of money and you can live the rest of your life pretty comfortably down there. And I don't know how we met him, but we just started playing with him, and it was fun to be in that situation again where I don't know any of these songs, and we're playing a performance at an actual venue, and bam, don't even tell me the title. So it was fun to have that experience down there as well. And then also for those students in South America and in Ecuador, I mean, they hadn't seen or experienced anything like that. So it was cool for them to be like, our teacher has no idea what's going on, but it's okay. We're all going to be fine.
Now, back in the States, you had your master's, and a lot of people turn to teaching right away, maybe in an institution. Did you ever have any interest in becoming a faculty, like a tenured type instructor?
No, I didn't. And the only reason why I did my master's at that moment was because I got offered a full scholarship. And someone had always told me, don't let education be a plan B. If you want to do it, just do it. And so I'm glad I did it. It was a pretty minimal program at that time, so it wasn't all time consuming. So I was able just to practice, really meet people, and start to like establish something around town. But it made things easier. The position did open up at a school. Really great bass player had passed away, Roger Shu, and he was teaching at Mount Sac. And they needed someone really fast, and I had my master's. I wasn't trying to teach, and they basically were like, you're taking this job. Because I had my master's, they were like, we don't have to do any paperwork. And it turns out I loved it. I love teaching. So that was a really great door to open, because I absolutely love teaching. And from teaching at community college, being around community college, you get everybody, right? You get old, young, international. So that was like a great experience, teaching the same level, but to very different people.
And then at some point you were probably, I'm guessing, playing in San Francisco and became part of the faculty. Was it SF Jazz or Monterey? I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I started teaching for the Monterey Jazz Festival. They had this traveling clinician program where once a month some teachers get together, and we hit 20 schools in 1 week. In 4 days we go to 20 schools, and we see the same each month. But that was another cool thing. I was again so lucky to grow up in California and go to the Monterey Jazz Festival, and I had met Paul Contos, who was the music educational director. And he he emailed me, and he's so sheepish. He's like, I saw your website, so I'm not even going to ask you this question. And I was like, please ask whatever you're going to ask. And he wanted me to ask if I'd be a traveling clinician, because I had met Paul being in the Monterey Jazz Festival Next Generation Orchestra, kept in touch with him a little bit, and he just wanted to have some fresher faces for these kids to see. And then that relationship blossomed into later. Last year, I started with Matt a jazz camp in Maui, and we were kind of like, we need to have Paul here, at least for the first year, to get this thing going, because like John Clayton and yourself, it's like you're watching a sensei, a master or something mold, take this pile of nothing and getting these kids who can barely hold a saxophone to play over a blues, and then all of a sudden they understand what Dorian is, how to play over, minor chords. So just watching him teach, I've learned so much as well.
Now, Maui had its debut last summer, 2019.
Yeah.
And so you had to be an administrator as well as an instructor. What did that feel like?
It's not so different from, I run my own band, which you wouldn't think that's a lot, to keep tabs on 3 people, including myself. But then you get into not just booking, but travel, hotels, food, all that stuff. So I was kind of used to the administrative sides of things, hopefully making sure my music is at that same level or above.
Right.
So trying to keep some certain standard. So I don't mind the administrative stuff, because I want to make sure, just from being on the road, like, if you have one time that's incorrect, you've missed your flight, you've missed the gig. So I don't mind, being thorough with that stuff. But yeah, that was, and that was down to the wire. But yeah, we did it. But yeah, definitely the administrator, making sure everyone stayed alive was also at the forefront of my mind.
Yes, I can imagine. So they were on their own part of the day, snorkeling and whatnot, but you had to kind of keep a watchful eye even then. Yeah. Right? You couldn't just throw them to the sharks and say, have a nice day. Yeah. Now, if the pandemic continues next summer, will there be a Maui Jazz Camp remotely, or are those chances remote?
That's a great question and a great way to put it. If the island is open now, you have to take a COVID test within of 24 hours maybe of going there. I don't think you have to quarantine. As soon as we can do it, we're going to do it. But like right now, we're doing a remote program workshop. So if we can't be together, we'll do it remotely for sure. So
interested students can contact you through your website?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And is there an age limit or a minimum age or
we take
maximum age?
Pretty much everything, but I would say like youngest probably like 12. So like if you're at just so that we don't have like 8-year-olds with 18-year-olds.
Right.
But also kind of like it's ageless. So if you're older and you want to, that's why the remote stuff is easy. We're accepting anybody now. Not because we need to, but everybody needs it, so I don't want to turn down people, have people turn them away an opportunity to learn.
Right. And just in a sketch outline, what would students learn, or how do you conduct, and are you able to play, are the students able to play at the same time, or are there limitations with Zoom that keep it from being an ensemble situation where they're playing as one?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a program I want to try called Jamulus. Maybe, have you heard of that?
Heard of it, have not tried it. I didn't have such luck with Jam Kazam. It just, I was a little suspicious of the name, so maybe I didn't give it enough. But the one time I got connected to it, there was feedback that took me back to my early days where, the singer would point the mic at the speaker and say, how come this isn't working? And then so anyway, I have no experience with Jamulus, but maybe that would be the way to bring everybody together.
Yeah, because
But in the meantime,
in a Zoom class, what I'll do now is I love trading because you can just go back and forth and trade. And I'll put a track on, just like maybe one chord, have a track going on in the background so we can trade back and forth. Or I'll be playing with one student and have everyone else mute their microphones and then just go one by one, kind of do it that way. But we are hoping to have like a final project for whatever level you are. And maybe it's you compose a song or a blues or something, and we can record it individually, or the faculty can record it and play it for you. So definitely playing is involved, but we're figuring out the remote stuff.
I think it's evolving. I mean, I think this time next year, God forbid there's still a virus out there, we will all be more capable, certainly hoping I am, in dealing with the reality that we face.
Yeah.
I mean, this could be music for a while. I'm recording with some live musicians this Friday. We will be distanced, but there will be no live audience, and then everything will be streamed. How that happens is still a mystery to me, but I'm just grateful that there are places, in this instance, the Barbara Morrison Performing Arts Center in Los Angeles has the facilities and the audio and the video capabilities. And it's great that you're continuing to teach and that people have these opportunities. They don't have to wait till next summer to go. You know, you might probably thought of this, but is it still called the Maui Jazz Camp even while it's done remotely?
Well, yeah, now we're calling it a virtual jazz workshop.
Okay, but I mean, you're wearing the Jams clothing, and maybe you should have a background of underwater activity or some tropical fish.
Maybe
I don't
we'll
know.
send everybody a pineapple.
That's sporting of you. Now, just a couple of things. I know I can go on and on. When you play, do you typically play pizzicato with just your index finger, or do you use the middle finger as well, or do you alternate?
I usually play, like if I'm playing not alternating fingers, I usually have both my fingers together, kind of like, I would say like getting the side of the finger a little bit. I don't ever play with just one finger. So like if I'm walking a bass line at like 100, 120 or something, it's just, this is together for whatever reason.
And would you say you use, for the left hand, a Samandal type fingering as a rule, or have you developed your own fingering, or is there another method that works best for you, or just the Katie Thiroux hybrid?
I guess, I don't really think of it that way anymore. I mean, I guess maybe it would be Samandal, but I kind of just do whatever it takes to make the music happen. But within reason, I'm not hurting myself. Keeping my hand position, that's super important for me. But yeah, I grew up on Samandal and George Vance, and then a little bit later got into the Verboth scale stuff. But again, even like you see all those different scale combinations, it's just whatever works for me to get the sound that I want, to play what I want. I'll just grab from anything.
And your choice of strings, does that stay the same, or do you try different types of strings from time to time? Yeah,
I'm not a gearhead. I'm not picky, which I'm happy for, because I know some people, for any instrument, it's expensive on the bass. Like, to get a set of strings is $200-$300. So I don't know what I used for the longest time. It was just on my bass for years because I didn't care. And then I was like, well, let me just try something. So I tried the Ava Perazzi light gauge, maybe when I was at Berkeley. And so I was like, these are fine. Try these for a while. But then the G string, this isn't R-rated, but the G string was too thin, and couldn't feel it under my fingers. Like felt like I was having to dig in way too hard. So my friend, who is a gearhead in LA, Mike Garola, said, try these olives from Parastro, these olive strings. He's like, they're expensive. And they are. That's like $100 a string. I think a set is $600.
Wow.
So I got a G, and for some reason I got a D string. So I like those. So right now that's what I have. I have a G and D olive, and the rest is Parastro lightweight. Because I am particular about that G string. I was at Lisa Goss's shop the end of last year, and I had called her ahead of time. And I'm like, I'm looking for a thick G string. And those perpetual strings had just come out, and someone was telling me about them. And she was so sweet. She took her little tool and measured all the strings she had with this little tool, how many millimeters. She's like, nothing is going to be as thick as this. So I just had some old olives in my case. I said, just throw these on. And I love them. They're awesome.
All right. And right now, your group is a trio, right? With your husband Tim on the drums and Mr. Coughlin on piano. He's your piano player? How long has he been with your band?
I think we started playing in maybe 2015 or 16. And the fun thing about that chair is it's not like who's available, but I know Justin is busy as well, and he's got his trio, and he's starting to do a lot of composing for different films and things like that. And so Justin, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was another piano player known by his first name that I was unaware of. You know, like Keith. Yeah. Somebody said Keith isn't playing anymore, and I thought Keith Emerson, Keith Hernandez.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like Aristotle. Some people have acquired. Or Cleopatra. Nobody asked their last name. But you're right. I said Mr. Coughlin, and you were cool with the first name. Okay.
But I like having that chair in the band be on rotation. So there's another piano player that I've actually known since I was in high school, but he lives on the East Coast, named Glenn Zaleski. And sometimes it doesn't have to be if I'm on the East Coast, I'll use him. It's just, I already know someone's busy, so I'm going to call Glenn, and so we'll play tour U.S. and Canada or go to Europe together. There's another piano player I like to play with in Europe, but I like to switch it up because it pushes me to do different things for sure. And
I've heard you with Larry Fuller.
Oh, yeah. That was fun, too. That was another one of those situations where Larry had just left John Pizzarelli's band and kind of wanted to do his own thing. And I think Matt had met Larry because Matt had played with John Pizzarelli. So they for a little bit, so they knew each other. And Matt was just like, hey, we'll put some gigs for you together in California. You don't even have to use us. But he ended up doing that. But man, just to learn all that, we played a lot of music that he played with Ray Brown. And he played with, I know you did too, with Ernestine Anderson.
Right. So
Larry just has that like sense of blues in his playing, which is just enormous. His sound is enormous. So getting to play with him was just incredible.
Now that kind of, it's a question or a comment that I've been wondering about. Your conception or your musical nirvana, would that be a blues drenched feeling? I mean, I know we all like to be eclectic and, oh, that's an interesting groove, or let me try that. But if you were to be pigeonholed and you had to, let's say, conceive of a recording, and it had a certain dominant, I don't mean seventh chord, but a predominant feeling, would it be the Oscar, Ray, Larry type of thing, or is there something else that really animates Katie Thiroux at this point?
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say, and I know when people hear it, especially the recorded music I've done, people would call that straight ahead, because right now, for whatever reason, it's like you're either straight ahead or you're modern. Right. But the way when I perform live, I definitely make recordings. It was a quote of Ray Brown. He said, play music that people want to listen to. So I take that to heart with the recorded music I play, not because I want to sell a bunch of records, but I want to, that's, my way to make people happy. So when I perform live, I'll definitely take it out a little bit more from the recordings, but over those same tunes, like we were talking about the other day, those American songbooks, jazz standards, whatever you want to call them, will never get old. And I was teaching a bunch of younger kids yesterday about the American songbook, and I said, all the things you are is probably recorded hundreds of times every year, and it's played millions of times a year, and people can keep doing different things with it. And I said, the music we've listened to the last few years, like, I don't think people are recording Britney Spears' Hit Me Baby One More Time year after year and recreating it, because the melodies don't hold a candle to what's been written before, and the chords. And I was like, these jazz standards, these American songbooks, is the music's comfortable, and there's so much you can do on top of it, so many things left to be explored. So yes, the short end of it, Ray Brown, Oscar Peterson, but I just, sometimes you just take it somewhere else too.
Right. And are there bass players that knock you out that might not be that style, but whose technique or conception is not necessarily enviable, but appealing in different ways? Players that are around today.
Yeah, I mean, I love Larry Grenadier. And that wasn't someone that I listened to growing up. When I was coming of age, it was like everybody was listening to Brad Mehldau. And not that I didn't have the time of day for it. I just wasn't there yet. I'm listening to Duke Ellington. I wasn't a purist, but it's like, I need to process this. I can't understand what's happening. So I probably didn't even listen to a Brad Mehldau record in earnest. Like, maybe I'm 32 now, maybe when I was like 25, I was like, okay, let's see what's going on here. And then just to hear Larry Grenadier's clean, clear sound, every idea that was coming out was clear, even though it was spontaneous and improvised. So someone like that is, speaks right to me, because I can hear everything going on. Pretty much, and everyone I've interviewed on the Hump, like yourself included, are people that I look up to. I haven't gotten yet to the bass players that use the instrument percussively and play. I've seen a little bit of that, but I need to sink my teeth in that. Some people are bass heads, or, you play guitar, you're into guitar. I'm a very simple person, Richard. So it's baby steps for me.
You're too humble. I mean, what you've done is just remarkable, and you're still doing it. And I'm so proud to have been in your presence during probably the golden age of Jazz America. Yeah. I mean, not that there won't be a platinum one down the road, but it was the coming together of a lot of really talented young people who were just focused and who listened to one another and brought a lot to the situation and inspired the teachers at the same time. So, and you probably had students along the way who just make you so glad that you're a musician and so glad that these people came to you, and that it's almost at times not a student-teacher situation. It's just people sharing the love of the same means of expression. And I guess in closing, is there any wisdom you want to bring to bear, even a fear, given this perilous situation we're in, any observation that you would share either with students or sidemen or people you want to play with, or just however you see this moment in time as a musician or as a citizen of the world? Anything you care to share?
Yeah.
I mean, that's about as open a question as I can think of.
Because I could think of one thing for sure. I mean, this is pre-pandemic, pandemic, and post-pandemic. A lot of students feel the pressure, music students, to, I'm doing this, so I have to go into music and major in music. You don't have to do that. You could still study something else that you're interested in, science, English, math, whatever. and make music a big part of your life. And I think it's hard when you're in it as a kid, and even if you're a parent, to see the great effects of learning an instrument, playing with people. You know, it's like sports in that way where you're part of a team. So I want to like tell students especially to take the pressure off. You don't have to do this professionally, but you can still make,
Right.
You could still have a career of it if you want to play, or at least you're learning to appreciate music. When we can all be together again, you can buy season tickets to something and support things. Or if you're interested in music, you kind of want to do it, but you're interested in the arts, we need great sound engineers, people who can record people properly.
Definitely.
Lighting technicians, I was overwhelmed a couple weeks ago. I did my first thing out of COVID, and I never do studio work, but it was a studio thing, and we did a filming thing. And for a 1 hour TV special, there was, 2,000 people working there. Lights, staging, everything. Someone just to, I need to move my chair. Oh, that was one person's job to, move a chair. So
right.
There's so much you can do in music around it. And then you might just find another path. You might find, I don't want to be a musician, but I want to support musicians. So I'm going to learn how to write grants, or I'm going to major in, nonprofit manage, whatever. So there's so much stuff for that to do. The second thing I'll say is it's never too late. You're never too old to learn an instrument, especially the bass. That's it.
Amen.
Yeah. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, that was well said. And this has been just a wonderful experience for me. This is actually an episode of Katie Thiroux's The Hump. And you've heard a humble statement of a person who is really a exemplary individual in terms of having a gift and learning everywhere she could and making the most of that gift, and now traveling the world and sharing it, and also imparting the wisdom of that closing statement of hers to say that music is a healing enterprise, no matter what aspect of it you participate in. And great pianist Ronell Bright told my wife one day, she said, I could play the piano, but I never really pursued it seriously. And he said, someone has to listen. Mm-hmm. And I think that's in keeping with what Katie just said. And I can only urge all of you to follow Katie's various exploits on her website, where you can experience some of her recordings, marvel at her itinerary, and envy her for her frequent flyer miles, and just enjoy the kind of life that people are leading among us, and don't be envious, just be inspired and realize that there's a place for everybody in the musical universe. So thank you, Katie, and I will look for you out there in the musical galaxy, and continued success to you.
Thank you, Richard. This was a great Hump takeover.
Well, I humbly cede the chair and the microphone back to you, and I had the time last night to enjoy your interview with Rufus Reed, mm-hmm. but I look forward to checking that out, and all the other great people that speak to you, and keep up the great work.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Katie. Take care.
Bye.
Virus con Dios.